Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Uranium Energy. It is time for another update, and today we continue to track the extension we have been looking at in the previous video within this area to the upside, as well as where we should be looking for a more significant top to take place and have a larger correction in this area. And we will show some signals for that in a moment, but before that I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And here we have been tracking this idea of a series of 1-2 setups that would expect a third wave to unfold within this area. And since within this structure we have very slim chances to actually manage to build a wave 3, we have been considering that we may form rather something more of a diagonal structure, more of a significant top in this idea of a 5-wave move to the upside within this area. Now, what does this mean? Well, we could form yet another wave 1 to the upside and have a wave 2 correction. That could be quite substantial. We could be going very easily even below the beginning of this entire 5th wave to the upside, yeah, below the $10 level basically, possibly even lower than that. And other than that, it could form actually even a more substantial top. It could be that this is the larger wave 1 forming a top within this area and that we would need to prepare for a very significant wave 2 correction. Now, is this a must? No, clearly not. And even if it does form this as a wave 1 to the upside and have a wave 2 correction, we could be looking for a more tame retracement, maybe into the 38.2%. And right now, I don't believe we should necessarily focus on this too much. I will provide all the relevant levels of support along the way, along our correction, and there is still a chance even that we continue and form our larger wave 3 to the upside. Now, moving on, within this structure, we still had great success forming this wave 3 to the upside and looking for trade setups. We had like 11 successful trade setups, yeah, for this wave 3 alone. They were within a smaller time frame, but then we had this highly regarded area of support for a wave 4 correction. We have been looking for such a correction, for such a wave 4, ever since we actually had a possible top within this wave 3, and this was earlier than the actual top. We were looking for a possible top at this point because we had already reached the ideal target and we were looking for a potential larger correction. We knew that this was going to be another great opportunity for accumulation and continuation higher. And not only that, we had a great estimation of when we should have expected a bottom within this correction. We were able to capitalize on this area and to look for continuation higher, and we have already gotten from the current bottom in this wave 2 to over a 2x return level, yeah? Now, in this structure, we have been looking again at a diagonal structure to form, meaning that this is likely going to form only an ABC pattern before we form a more significant top. Now, do we need to form a large extension to build this? Well, no, we could be closer than you may anticipate to a significant top, where realistically, if I'm to track an ABC within this structure, I would only need here a 4th and a 5th to have a full count. And of course, I will be looking for extensions for as long as possible. I will be using areas of support that would indicate to us when we should expect a failure. We will have a very early signal when we should expect this to already have a more significant top within this area. And before we actually go into the smaller time frame, I wanted to show you once again the bullish interpretation. And for this, we have the blue scenario where we have been tracking a series of 1-2 setups instead, and this hasn't been necessarily on the high focus map for us because it is a rather unrealistic expectation. Now, the changes, the structure from the previous video did allow us to look for a potential shift in such a pattern, in such an idea. We did have an early hint that a more bullish structure could have formed, and we still can, but it is at risk right now, and we will be discussing more about that in the smaller time frame. But from the large time frame perspective, technically this structure is unharmed. We have managed to hold each area of support for continuation higher within this idea of a 1-2 setup, but there just is that element of unrealistic expectation that forces us to be just much more cautious than hopeful for this scenario. Now, in the smaller time frame, I can actually even remove this large time frame interpretation. For the blue scenario, we have been focusing on this idea of an ABC structure. Again, within the wave C, we expect to form a 4th and a 5th. We expect to build the 5-wave move to the upside to have a full pattern. And in terms of the internal structure, we would assume in the green interpretation that a third wave top could be in place. We were looking for a potential top to be in place. Even in the previous video, we didn't need this extension higher, but we were actually looking for this within the blue interpretation, where we have been tracking the idea of a potential impulse. Because within this structure, we got such an extension that I have been able to look for an impulse in a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and a 5th. Now, within this structure, we had the area of support for continuation to higher prices in the previous video. We did hold it, we did extend higher, and I would say that we extended even more than necessary, because right now, based on the current structure within this area, I would actually highly expect of this 5th wave to form yet another high for it to be a reliable pattern to track for continuation to even higher prices. Now, this will need also an update for the area of support, and it is going to be quite fragile. We are tracking still an ending diagonal within this wave 5, and I would actually consider that this would be a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and a 5th. We would expect to form a 5th wave within this area. I can actually even add here a smaller time frame count for this interpretation, and for this to remain still possible and still offer us some degree of trust, we would need to not break below the $18.4 level. Below that, I would be looking with high conviction for a larger wave 4 correction in the green interpretation instead, for which the updated area of support sits here at the levels between the $17.8 all the way down to the $14.4 level. And I want to make this absolutely clear. So for the blue scenario, where we could track even an impulse, even the larger bullish structure, I would need to hold here the $18.4 level. It may still be salvaged even if we break it, but I wouldn't track it with enough of a degree of trust, and I would be focusing primarily on the green interpretation to take charge once again. For continuation to higher prices within a somewhat reliable structure, I would be looking at the last level of support at the $14.4 level. Below that, it could still work out, but I will not be looking for a high likelihood continuation, and I would be prepared for a more significant top to already be in place for this 5th wave in the white interpretation. So right now we are in kind of a fragile spot. I wouldn't really expect it to be an issue to hold this area of support for the green interpretation, but I do see it rather difficult for the blue scenario to manage to still follow through. But currently we are holding the area of support. I wouldn't rule it out as of yet, but yeah, it is definitely not seeming to be too promising. Now, I wanted to remind you, within the green interpretation, we are, by the way, tracking an ending diagonal within this wave C, meaning that within the wave 3, we were tracking the idea of an ABC structure. We will look for an ABC structure in the green interpretation, in the green area of support, and we will be looking for continuation in the follow-up wave 5 also within an ABC structure. And this is about it for this time frame. And before we close off, let's have a look at the smaller time frame, at the blue interpretation we can track within that area. And here we can track an area of support for continuation higher, but we have already basically maxed it out. Yeah, we can look for a potential A, B, C structure to unfold within this area. This is in the end all we need to build a 5th wave in this last push to the upside expected for the blue interpretation. But below the $18.8 level, it would be quite difficult to look for this structure to form in a direct fashion. Now, could we form a reset within this wave 4? Definitely, especially if we don't drag it out too much. I would expect in the end a similar proportion correction within this wave 4 as we have within this wave 2. But yeah, if we form a quick reset of this bottom of this low, I wouldn't see it as a problem, and in the end I wouldn't expect it to be a high probability trade setup anyway in this area, especially because we only have an initial 3-wave move to the upside. Now keep in mind this is also within a nano time frame, and I wouldn't expect these patterns to be able to be tracked too reliably. And yeah, we already seem to be pushing below the area of support. Now, if we are to track a larger correction within the wave 4 in green, we would expect ideally to form an ABC structure. And so far, we only have a 3-wave pattern to the downside. Technically, this wave 4 in blue could have bottomed. We didn't need any additional lows. Could still see a reset, but yeah, it is what it is. And depending on what type of structure we form in a larger correction, assuming we have formed the wave 3 top in green, we would be looking either at the 100% extension of the initial wave down for an ideal target to the $18 level, or the 138.2% extension around the $17.5 level. Now, that would need to be tracked separately, and we won't go into all the details right now, but we would need to be prepared for a potentially more complex correction. I wouldn't necessarily go ahead and assume how this will unfold, especially within such a small time frame. I just want to remind you, we should expect a similar proportion correction with what we have in this wave 2 in green for this wave 4 in green. Now, the ideal target for the wave 4, as always, is at the 38.2% retracement, and that is at the $16.4 level. And by the way, we already seem to be failing to extend higher directly within this fifth wave in blue, and we seem very likely to be heading directly for a break of the area of support. So yeah, brace yourself for the larger correction in the green interpretation. Again, below the $18.4, this is a high likelihood that we will form the larger correction in the green interpretation. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.